I woke up in a hospital bed to find my lawyer standing over me with documents in his hands and a look on his face I'll never forget. "Vivian," he said quietly, "your son just tried to have you declared legally dead while you were still in surgery." My name is Vivian Porter. I'm 73 years old, and I'm about to tell you the most unbelievable story of my life. One that started with a routine surgery and ended with me discovering that my own son had been planning my financial murder for months. But before I dive in, tell me, where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love hearing from all of you. Let me take you back 6 months. I was living comfortably in Portland, Oregon, in the home my late husband Richard and I bought in 1985. Richard passed away 8 years ago from a heart attack, and since then, I'd been managing everything on my own: my finances, my investments, my small rental property portfolio. I wasn't wealthy by any means, but I was comfortable. I had about $400,000 in savings, 2 rental properties worth roughly $300,000 each, and a modest collection of jewelry Richard had given me over our 42 years of marriage. My son Brandon is 48 years old. He's my only child. For years, he'd been what I thought was a successful real estate developer. Nice suits, expensive car, always talking about deals and investments. He visited regularly, always asking how I was managing, if I needed help with anything. I thought he was being a devoted son. I had no idea he was actually doing reconnaissance. The truth started to reveal itself in January when I was diagnosed with a heart valve issue. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough that my cardiologist recommended surgery. It was supposed to be routine. They'd go in, repair the valve, and I'd be back home in a week. Brandon immediately jumped into action. He insisted on being there for every doctor's appointment. He wanted to know every detail about the surgery, the recovery timeline, the risks. I thought he was worried about his mother. I was so naive. "Mom, this is serious surgery," he said to me one evening about 3 weeks before my scheduled operation. We were sitting in my living room, and he had this concerned look on his face. "What if something happens? Have you thought about power of attorney? Just as a precaution?" I should have seen the red flag right there, but I didn't. I told him I'd think about it. The truth is, I already had arrangements in place. My estate attorney, Marcus Winters, had been handling my affairs since Richard died. Marcus and I had known each other for 25 years. Our daughters went to school together. He'd set up a proper will, healthcare directives, everything legally sound and protected. But I never mentioned this to Brandon. Something in my gut told me not to, and thank God I listened to that instinct. Brandon brought it up again a week later, and then again 3 days after that. Each time his tone got a little more urgent, a little more insistent. "Mom, you're not being responsible," he told me. "What if you're unconscious after surgery? Someone needs to be able to make medical decisions, handle your bills, access your accounts." He made it sound so reasonable, so necessary. He even offered to have his attorney draw up the paperwork to save me the trouble. That's when I made the smartest decision of my entire ordeal. I called Marcus. I told him about Brandon's pressure, about how uncomfortable it made me feel. Marcus didn't hesitate. "Vivian, don't sign anything, not a single document. If Brandon asks again, tell him you need to think about it and you'll use your own attorney. And Vivian, I want you to do something for me. I want you to give me permission to do a background check on Brandon's finances." I was shocked. "Marcus, he's my son. That seems—" "Trust me on this," Marcus interrupted. "Something doesn't feel right. Let me look into it. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize. But if I'm right, you need to know before you go into that hospital." I agreed, though it made me feel terrible. What kind of mother investigates her own child? But Marcus called me back 72 hours later, and the tone of his voice made my blood run cold. "Vivian, we need to meet, today. Can you come to my office?" What Marcus showed me that afternoon destroyed everything I thought I knew about my son. Brandon wasn't a successful developer. He was drowning in debt, nearly $2 million worth. His last 3 real estate projects had failed spectacularly. He'd been borrowing from private lenders at astronomical interest rates. His house, his car, everything was mortgaged beyond reason. He was 3 months away from bankruptcy, possibly criminal charges for fraud. He needs money, Vivian, desperately, and he knows you have it, Marcus explained, spreading documents across his desk. I'm concerned about the timing of his interest in power of attorney. Very concerned. I sat there in Marcus's office, staring at bank statements and court filings with my son's name on them, and I felt something inside me harden. This was the baby I'd carried for 9 months, the toddler I'd stayed up with during nightmares, the teenager I defended against everyone, and he was planning to rob me. What do we do? I asked Marcus. First, you don't sign anything. Second, we need to document everything, every conversation, every request he makes. Third, and this is crucial, we set up some protection. I'm going to draft an emergency revocation document. If anything happens, if anyone tries to claim power of attorney over you, this document invalidates it immediately. I'll keep the original in my safe. I'm also going to file it with the county clerk's office. Do you really think he'd... Vivian, Marcus cut me off gently. I think your son is desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. The surgery was scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day, ironically enough. Brandon called me the night before. Mom, I'll be there early. I'll be with you the whole time. Don't worry about anything. His voice was so warm, so reassuring. If I hadn't known what I knew, I would have believed he genuinely cared. But Marcus and I had spent the past 2 weeks preparing for every possible scenario. We'd created a paper trail. We'd documented Brandon's financial situation. We'd set up automated alerts on all my accounts that would notify Marcus immediately if there was any unusual activity. And most importantly, Marcus had arranged to be at the hospital under the pretense of bringing me some documents to sign related to one of my rental properties. I arrived at the hospital at 6 a.m. Brandon was already there, pacing in the pre-op area. He hugged me, asked how I was feeling, told me everything would be fine. The nurses prepped me, started the IV, asked their questions. Brandon never left my side. He was holding my hand when they wheeled me toward the operating room. I love you, Mom, he said, squeezing my fingers. I'll be right here when you wake up. Those were the last words I heard before the anesthesia took hold. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't learn until later, was that the moment those operating room doors closed behind me, Brandon went to work. The surgery took 4 hours, standard procedure, no complications. While the surgical team was carefully repairing my heart valve, Brandon was in the hospital cafeteria making phone calls. He called banks. He called investment firms. He called the county clerk's office. And he presented documents. Documents claiming I had signed over power of attorney to him 3 days before my surgery. The documents were sophisticated forgeries. They had my signature or a very good copy of it. They had notary stamps. They looked completely legitimate. Brandon had gone to a great deal of trouble and expense to create them. What he didn't know was that Marcus had anticipated exactly this move. Marcus had arrived at the hospital around hour 3 of my surgery. He checked with the nurses' station, confirmed I was still in the OR, and then stationed himself in the waiting area where he had a clear view of Brandon. He watched my son make those phone calls. He saw Brandon's face, the expression of someone who thought he was getting away with something. Then Marcus made some calls of his own. He contacted the banks Brandon had called. He contacted the investment firms. He sent them copies of the revocation document. He informed them that any power of attorney presented by Brandon Porter was fraudulent and should not be honored under any circumstances. He threatened legal action if they proceeded without verification. By the time I was in recovery, still groggy from anesthesia, Marcus had shut down every attempt Brandon had made to access my accounts. But that wasn't enough for Marcus. He wanted to catch Brandon in the act, to create an undeniable record of what he was attempting to do. I started to regain consciousness around 2 in the afternoon. Everything was fuzzy. The lights too bright, sounds too loud, my chest aching from the incision. I could hear voices, beeping machines, footsteps on linoleum. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like they weighed 100 pounds each. Then I heard Marcus's voice, low and urgent. "Vivian, if you can hear me, I need you to stay quiet. Don't let anyone know you're awake yet. Can you squeeze my hand if you understand?" I managed a weak squeeze. My brain was struggling to process what was happening. Why was Marcus telling me to pretend to still be unconscious? "Good," Marcus whispered. "Your son is in the hallway right now. He's talking to hospital administration. He's trying to have you declared mentally incompetent. He has a psychiatrist with him, someone he's clearly paid off, who's claiming you've been showing signs of dementia for months. He's attempting to get emergency guardianship while you're still sedated." Even through the fog of anesthesia, I felt a jolt of absolute clarity. My son wasn't just trying to steal from me. He was trying to erase me as a person. He was trying to have me declared incompetent so he could control everything: my money, my property, my medical care, my entire life. "The hospital is questioning his claims because I've already presented them with documentation showing you're of sound mind," Marcus continued. "But he's pushing hard. He's telling them you're confused, that you're a danger to yourself, that he needs immediate authority to make medical and financial decisions. I've called the police. They're on their way. But I need you to be ready to speak when I ask you to. Can you do that?" I squeezed his hand again, harder this time. The anger was burning through the medication fog. My own son, my only child, the baby I'd sacrificed everything for. "He's coming back," Marcus whispered. "Stay still." I kept my eyes closed as footsteps entered the recovery room. Brandon's voice, fake concern dripping from every word. "How is she? Is she awake yet? The doctor said she should be waking up by now." A nurse responded, professional and neutral. "She's stable. She'll wake up when she's ready." "I need to speak with someone in authority," Brandon insisted. "I have power of attorney. I need to make some decisions about her care, her long-term care. I've been researching facilities because she can't live alone anymore. Her memory has been—" "Mr. Porter," Marcus interrupted, and I could hear the steel in his voice. "We need to talk, outside." "Who the hell are you?" Brandon shot back. "This is a family matter. I don't know who you think you are, but—" "I'm Vivian Porter's attorney of record. I'm also the person who's been documenting your fraudulent attempts to access her accounts for the past 4 hours. And I'm the person who's going to be standing next to you when the police arrive in approximately—" He paused. 3 minutes. The silence that followed Marcus's statement was deafening. Even through my closed eyelids, I could feel the tension in the room crystallize into something dangerous. "I don't know what you're talking about," Brandon finally said, but his voice had changed. The fake warmth was gone, replaced by something cold and sharp. "My mother asked me to handle her affairs. I have documentation." "You have forgeries," Marcus corrected. "Very expensive forgeries, which tells me you've been planning this for quite some time. But they're still forgeries. Your mother never signed any power of attorney in your favor. In fact, she specifically revoked any such authority 3 weeks ago, which is documented and filed with the county." "That's impossible. She couldn't, and she did, because your mother is significantly sharper than you've given her credit for. She knew something was wrong when you started pressuring her, and unlike you, she has actual concern for family. So she asked me to investigate before jumping to conclusions. What I found was a desperate man drowning in debt, willing to commit fraud and exploitation of an elder to save himself." I heard movement. Shoes scuffing against the floor. Brandon was backing away, I realized. He was getting ready to run. "I wouldn't," Marcus said calmly. "Hospital security is already at the exits. The police are in the building. There's nowhere to go, Brandon. This is over." "She's my mother. Those are her assets. After everything she—" Brandon's voice was rising now, the carefully maintained facade crumbling. "Do you know what it's been like? Watching her sit on all that money while I'm losing everything? She doesn't need it all. She's old. She could help me. She should help me. I'm her son. You're a thief, Marcus said, and the words hung in the air like a judgment. And you were willing to have your own mother declared incompetent, to put her in a facility against her will, to rob her of her autonomy and dignity, all to cover your own bad decisions. You don't understand. The debt, the people I owe, they're not the kind of people who accept excuses. I needed that money. I need it now. Then you should have asked your mother for help honestly. You should have told her the truth and let her decide. Instead, you chose to betray her trust in the most fundamental way possible. I heard new voices then, deeper, authoritative. The police had arrived. Marcus had timed everything perfectly. Brandon Porter? One of the officers spoke. We need you to come with us. We have some questions about fraudulent documents and attempted elder financial exploitation. What happened next would forever be seared into my memory. My son, the child I'd raised, the boy I'd taught to read, the young man I'd sent to college, started yelling, screaming about his rights, about how this was all a misunderstanding, about how I was confused and needed his help. The desperation in his voice wasn't for me. It was for himself, for the money he thought he was about to lose. And that's when I opened my eyes. Brandon, I said, my voice rough from the breathing tube they'd had in my throat during surgery, but clear enough, strong enough. Stop talking. The room went completely silent. Brandon spun around, his face going white as he stared at me. The officers paused. Marcus stepped closer to my bed, a slight smile on his face. Mom, Brandon breathed, you're awake. Thank God. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Tell them I was just trying to help you. You were trying to steal from me, I interrupted. My voice was getting stronger with each word. You forged documents. You attempted to access my bank accounts without authorization. You tried to have me declared mentally incompetent while I was in surgery. And from what I just heard, you've been planning this for weeks, possibly months. No, Mom, you're confused. The anesthesia... I'm not confused, Brandon. I'm perfectly clear. Marcus, please give the officers copies of all the documentation we prepared. I watched my son's face as the truth hit him. That I'd known, that I'd been aware of his financial problems, that I'd set up protections before ever going into surgery. The shock gave way to something uglier. Rage. You knew? He hissed. You knew I was in trouble and you did nothing? What kind of mother does that? The kind who wanted to give her son a chance to do the right thing, I replied. The kind who waited to see if you'd come to me honestly and ask for help instead of trying to rob me. You failed that test, Brandon. Unbelievable. You were testing me? While I'm losing everything? You're losing everything because you made bad decisions and then tried to fix them by committing crimes against your own mother. That's on you, not on me. One of the officers stepped forward. Mr. Porter, we need you to come with us now. You can continue this conversation at the station. Brandon looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure hatred. I hope you're happy, Mom. I hope it was worth it. Keeping your precious money and destroying your only son. I didn't destroy you, I said quietly. You destroyed yourself. I just refused to let you destroy me in the process. They led him away in handcuffs. I could hear him yelling as they took him down the hallway, his voice echoing off the walls, ranting about ungrateful parents and greedy old women who cared more about money than family. The nurses in the recovery room were stunned, exchanging glances but saying nothing. When the door finally closed and the sound of Brandon's voice faded, I looked at Marcus. Is it really over? The immediate threat is, he replied, but there's more you need to know. While you were in surgery, Brandon didn't just try to access your accounts. He went to your house. My heart, freshly repaired, seemed to skip a beat. What did he do? Let me get the detective. He needs to hear this directly from you, and you need to hear what they found. If you're as stunned as I was at what I'm about to tell you next, hit that subscribe button. Detective Sarah Martinez came into my recovery room 20 minutes later. She was in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a notebook already open in her hands. Marcus stayed by my bedside as she pulled up a chair. "Mrs. Porter, I know you're recovering from surgery, so I'll try to make this quick," she began. "We need to talk about what your son did while you were in the operating room. It goes beyond the financial fraud." I felt Marcus's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "Tell me." "We executed a search warrant at your residence based on information Mr. Winters provided us. What we found suggests your son had been planning this for significantly longer than we initially thought." She flipped through her notebook. "We found a second set of keys to your home, which he'd apparently had made without your knowledge. We found documents showing he'd been surveilling your daily routines for at least 3 months, and we found evidence that he'd entered your home multiple times while you were out." My stomach turned. "He was in my house? When?" "Best we can determine. At least 6 times in the past 2 months. We believe he was documenting your assets, photographing your jewelry, searching for financial documents, possibly installing some kind of monitoring software on your home computer." "Oh my God." "But here's where it gets worse, Mrs. Porter. This morning, while you were in surgery, he went to your house with a moving truck. He had 2 other men with him. We're still working on identifying them. They loaded up approximately 40 boxes of your belongings. Your jewelry was gone, several pieces of furniture, file boxes from your home office, even some of your personal items, photos, clothing. When we intercepted them, the truck was heading toward a storage facility in Vancouver, Washington, just across the state line. I couldn't breathe. The machines I was hooked up to started beeping faster as my heart rate spiked. A nurse rushed over, checking my vitals, looking concerned. "Mrs. Porter, you need to stay calm," the nurse said. "Your blood pressure is spiking." "He was stealing my life," I managed to say. "While I was on an operating table, he was stealing my entire life." Detective Martinez nodded grimly. "That's exactly what he was doing. We believe his plan was to have you declared incompetent, potentially get you placed in a long-term care facility, and then liquidate your assets. The jewelry alone, according to the appraisals we found in his possession, was worth approximately $150,000. Your mother's engagement ring, your grandmother's pearls, the diamond bracelet your late husband gave you for your 40th anniversary." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, from rage. Pure, white-hot rage. These weren't just valuable items, they were my history, my memories, the physical representations of a lifetime of love and loss and important moments. And my son was going to sell them like they were items at a garage sale. "We recovered everything," Detective Martinez continued. "It's all being cataloged as evidence, but you'll get it back. Every single piece. I promise you that." "What charges is he facing?" I asked, opening my eyes and looking directly at her. "So far? Multiple counts." Detective Martinez continued, her voice steady and professional. "Attempted financial exploitation of an elder, forgery, fraud, theft, burglary, and potentially identity theft, depending on what our tech team finds on your computer. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at minimum 15 years in state prison, possibly more." "Good," I said, and I meant it. The nurse gave me a concerned look, but I didn't care. "I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I don't want any plea deals. I don't want any reduced sentences. I want everyone to know exactly what he did." "Mrs. Porter, I understand you're angry and you have every right to be," Detective Martinez said carefully, "but I need you to understand that your son is already trying to spin this. His attorney contacted us an hour ago claiming this was all a misunderstanding, that he was just trying to protect your assets, that he was worried about your mental state. He's going to paint himself as a concerned son and you as a confused elderly woman." "Then we bury him in evidence," Marcus interjected. "We have the forged documents. We have the bank records showing his attempts at unauthorized access. We have his financial records showing his motive. We have the moving truck, the stolen items, the surveillance, and we have Vivian's testimony showing she's perfectly competent and was aware enough to set up protections before her surgery. There's something else, Detective Martinez said, hesitating. Your son's wife called the station. She claims she knew nothing about any of this. She says she's been trying to divorce him for the past year, but he's been delaying the proceedings. She wants to cooperate with the investigation. I thought about my daughter-in-law, Claire. I'd always liked her. She was quiet, kept to herself, but she'd been kind to me. We hadn't spoken much in the past year, which I'd found odd but hadn't questioned. Now I understood why. Let her cooperate, I said. If she genuinely didn't know, I don't want her caught up in this. The detective nodded, making notes. I'll need a full statement from you, but that can wait until you're stronger. For now, I want you to focus on recovering. Mr. Winters has been incredibly helpful in building the case, and with the evidence we have, your son isn't going anywhere. After Detective Martinez left, Marcus and I sat in silence for a moment. The recovery room felt smaller somehow, the weight of everything pressing down on me. You did everything right, Marcus finally said. You trusted your instincts. You asked for help. You protected yourself. None of this is your fault. He's my son, Marcus. I raised him. Somewhere along the way, I failed him. No, Marcus said firmly. He made his choices. Bad choices, criminal choices, but they were his choices. You gave him every opportunity to come to you honestly. He chose deception and theft instead. That's not on you. What happens now? Now you heal, you recover, you get your strength back, and then we make sure Brandon faces the consequences of his actions. We also need to secure your assets, change your locks, maybe consider moving temporarily. Moving from my own home? Just until the legal proceedings are finished, Marcus explained. Brandon clearly knows how to get into your house. Even if he's in jail, we don't know who else he might have given access to or what arrangements he might have made. I have a friend who owns a secure apartment building downtown. I can get you a furnished unit on short notice, fully protected, while we handle everything else. I wanted to argue, but he was right. My home didn't feel safe anymore. Brandon had violated it, turned it into a crime scene. The thought of going back there and sleeping in rooms he'd searched through, seeing furniture he'd planned to steal, walking on floors he'd crossed with criminal intent, it made me feel sick. Okay, I agreed, but I want to go home first. I want to see what he did. I need to see it. When you're stronger? Now, Marcus, or as soon as the doctors clear me. I need to face this head on, not hide from it. Marcus knew me well enough not to argue. I'll arrange it, but I'm coming with you, and so is a security detail. I was released from the hospital 5 days later. My chest hurt, I was tired constantly, and the doctors loaded me up with medications and restrictions. But my mind was sharp, and my resolve was sharper. Marcus drove me home with 2 security guards following in a separate car. The moment I walked through my front door, I could feel it. The violation. Things were slightly off. A drawer not quite closed. A closet door ajar. The subtle disorder of someone who'd tried to cover their tracks but hadn't quite succeeded. I went to my bedroom, to the jewelry box on my dresser. Empty. The safe in my closet, the one I thought was cleverly hidden behind my winter coats. The door was hanging open, the contents gone. He knew where everything was, I said quietly. He'd watched me, studied me, planned this down to the smallest detail. Marcus followed me through the house, documenting everything with his phone camera. In my home office, the filing cabinets had been rifled through. My computer was still there, but according to the tech forensics team, Brandon had installed key logging software that had been recording everything I typed for months, every password, every account number, every private email. I have something that might help, Marcus said. The prosecution is building a timeline. They want to show premeditation, prove this wasn't a spontaneous decision but a calculated long-term plan. Your daughter-in-law provided some text messages between her and Brandon that are illuminating. He showed me his phone. Messages from Brandon to Claire, dated back almost 6 months. Once she's in surgery, I make the move. She won't know what hit her. The jewelry alone will clear half my debts. The house can be sold within 60 days if I have POA. She's old. She doesn't need all that money. I'm her only heir anyway. I'm just speeding up the inevitable. Reading those words, written by my own son, about me, while I was still alive and conscious and trusting him, something inside me broke and then immediately reformed, harder than before. I want to testify, I said. I want to stand in front of a judge and jury and tell them exactly who Brandon Porter is. The trial took place 4 months later. By then, I'd recovered from my surgery completely. I'd moved into a secure apartment, as Marcus suggested. I'd changed all my locks, my passwords, my account numbers. I'd installed a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous, and I'd spent those months preparing for this moment. The courtroom was packed. The local news had picked up the story. Son attempts to rob mother during surgery. And it had struck a nerve with people. I saw elderly women in the gallery, some with their own adult children beside them, watching with expressions of horror and solidarity. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was everyone's fear. Brandon sat at the defense table in a suit I recognized, one I'd bought him for his 40th birthday. He wouldn't look at me. His attorney had tried everything to keep me off the stand, arguing I was biased, that my medications might affect my testimony, that my age made me an unreliable witness. The judge denied every motion. When they called me to testify, I walked to that stand with my head high. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. And then I told them everything, every conversation, every warning sign I'd ignored, every moment I'd trusted my son, and every way he'd betrayed that trust. I didn't cry. I didn't waver. I looked directly at the jury and made sure they understood that this wasn't confusion or vindictiveness. This was a mother protecting herself from a predator who happened to share her DNA. The prosecutor showed the forged documents, the bank records, the surveillance evidence, the text messages, the photos of my empty jewelry box and ransacked home. Claire testified about Brandon's financial problems and his increasingly desperate behavior. The tech expert testified about the spyware on my computer. Marcus testified about the timeline, the protections we'd set up, the fraudulent attempts to access my accounts. Brandon's defense tried to paint me as a bitter, wealthy mother who'd refused to help her struggling son. They tried to suggest I was mentally declining and didn't understand the situation. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 12. "Mr. Porter," the judge said, looking at my son over her reading glasses, "you didn't just commit financial crimes. You violated the fundamental trust between parent and child. You preyed on your mother's vulnerability during a medical crisis. Your actions were calculated, callous, and cruel. This sentence reflects not just the legal violations, but the profound moral failure you've demonstrated." I sat in that courtroom and watched my son being led away in handcuffs. He finally looked at me then, and I saw something I'd been waiting for but never expected. Tears. Not tears of remorse for what he'd done to me, but tears of self-pity for what he'd lost. That was 3 months ago. Today, I'm back in my home. My jewelry is in a safety deposit box at the bank. My assets are secured with protections Marcus helped me set up that make it nearly impossible for anyone to access them without multiple levels of verification. I've started speaking at elder advocacy groups, telling my story, helping other seniors recognize the warning signs of financial exploitation. Because what happened to me happens every single day to people who aren't lucky enough to have a Marcus Winters in their corner, who don't trust their instincts, who believe that family loyalty means accepting abuse. My son will be in prison for a long time. I don't visit him. I don't accept his calls. I've grieved for the son I thought I had and accepted that person never really existed. What existed was an entitled, desperate man who saw his mother as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be loved. But I survived. I fought back, and I won. That's my story. I woke up from surgery to find my son had tried to steal my life, and I woke up fighting. Remember, trust your instincts. Document everything. Protect yourself. Family is supposed to mean love and support, but sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who know us best. Stay vigilant, stay strong, and never apologize for protecting yourself, no matter who the threat comes from.